Hi, this is Coach Chot Reyes, and welcome to Coaching Chronicles, the men and women in the arena. Those close to me know that one of my most favorite poems or pieces of work is the public address that Theodore Roosevelt gave entitled The Man in the Arena. And it is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred with dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming. And then it ends by saying, if he fails, at least he fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. You all know I know defeat very well. And my career, in as much as I have won some accolades in my coaching career and some awards and some championships, it has as well been filled with a lot of adversity, a lot of defeat, and a lot of losses. And that's the reason why we have decided to produce this podcast. Three things I want to achieve here. First, I want to inspire not only coaches, but regular business people, executives, employees who are undergoing significant and tremendous personal or professional adversity to be able to climb out of that hole, to be able to climb out of the depths, and still continue the journey, the fight into whatever they're doing at the moment. Secondly, I want it to be a learning opportunity. We are going to guest sports, business, corporate celebrities who have undergone celebrated defeats and adversity in their lives. And we're going to ask them what they learned in the process. And finally, I hope by listening or watching the podcast, viewers and listeners would also get ideas for their own personal growth. I'm a big believer that we continuously grow while we are alive. I'm a big believer in the growth mindset, the work of Carol Dweck, that says that while we are alive, we continue to learn, we continue to develop, we continue to grow. And those are the things that I want to partake. We wish to inspire. We wish to be able to deliver some learnings. And finally, in the process, help our listeners and our viewers to grow in either their personal or professional lives. Welcome to Coaching Chronicles.
Theodore Roosevelt once said, "The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, who at best, if he wins, knows the thrills of high achievement, and if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly."
I find that if you fill your day and your mind with productive things, the negative things are no space.
Okay, for our very first guest in the inaugural episode of Coaching Chronicles, we were thinking about it, and of course, no other than my good friend, my good buddy. We go back a long way, Coach Tim Cohn. Tim, thanks a lot for making the time and coming here, man.
First of all, I'm incredibly honored that I'd be the first, and number two, that I'd do anything for you. So I'm here and ready to bear it all.
When we were talking about it, who would be the most logical, the best, most interesting guest? Of course, we said it's got to start with you. So we want to start with things that not too many people know, and that's really the early beginnings or the start of your coaching career, specifically when you were playing in college. I don't think many people know that you actually played hoops in college and you were under a legendary coach. Yeah.
Yeah, he was legendary, but he was more legendary because he was such a hard, I'm not sure I can use the term, but, he was the kind of coach where if you saw him in the hallway or you were walking and you saw him and there was a way to get away, you would run out the other way. You would not want to see him off the court because he was so intimidating. His name was Bud Presley. And it's funny because, whenever I tell somebody that I played for Bud Presley, the people that knew him, Phil Jackson, for one, Eric Spoelstra.
And we were having dinner with, who was that guy in the World Cup who also knew him? Was that
Jeff Van Gundy.
Van Gundy.
Well, Jeff Van Gundy played for him also.
Yeah, that's why.
But whenever they see me, it's like, oh, you poor guy. You played for him? That's credible. And, coming from Manila, I came from international school, playing here in high school. And, the coaches were not demanding. It was like, let's just, it's high school. Let's go out and play. And I think the toughest basketball that I played in was actually the village leagues. The Bel Air, Magallanes, those leagues. Those were really physical and tough, and you had to hold your own. But the high school was so soft. Our practices were soft. And then I go to college, and I run into this guy, and it was like the biggest culture shock that you could ever have. But the bottom line is, I learned so much from him. I mean, he was an incredible teacher, first of all.
What college was this?
This is called Menlo College.
Menlo, yeah.
Menlo College, and it's a stone's throw away from Stanford University, down by Palo Alto in California. And I had gone to visit the school. I had gone from LA after college.
Mm-hmm.
I was traveling with my parents, and so I went and I worked out with a couple small schools in Southern Cal, Azusa Pacific, and Biola, some of the schools there I worked out. And then I moved up towards San Francisco, and my coach from high school had written Menlo because they knew that I was interested in going there. So I went and interviewed with Coach Bud.
Coach Bud.
And he seemed like the nicest guy in the world. Like, wow, this is
cool. In the interview.
He was like, man, he was so personable and everything. And I was all geared up. My father had attended with me the interview. And so I was all geared up to go. I think that the funny story, though, is that when I finally, that was before the school started.
Yeah.
And I hadn't actually, it was the summer before. So I went back to Manila, and then I came back to college on my own. And the first day, I'll never forget this. The first day you go in, you put all your bags and stuff, and you get to your room, and my roommate wasn't there yet, who's really one of my closest friends to this day, but I hadn't met him yet. So then we went. I didn't know what to do, and I said, is there any basketball going on? I asked. They go, yeah, you can go to the gym and work out. Yeah. And so I got my gear on, ran over to the gym. And I walk into these big doors, because I walk in, I stand at the edge, and I'm watching these guys. They're running up and down the floor.
So they're playing.
They're playing. Yeah. And it's like a scrimmage, like a fun. It's not the team itself. I mean, but it was the team. The guys were just doing before the school started, and they were incredible. I mean, they were going up and dunking it with two hands, throwing behind the back passes, shooting deep shots. There was no 3-point shot then, but they were shooting deep shots. And I said to myself, "Oh my gosh, I can't play with these guys. I really can't." So I got in there. It was next, so I joined the scrimmage. I started playing. The first shot I took, whack! Somebody whacked it out of bounds. Supal. And I was like, this cannot be. And I was so discouraged. What happened, though, was my who was going to be my teammate later on was Curtis Townsend.
Oh.
And he was there. He was an entering freshman with me. And so his brother was Raymond Townsend.
Yeah.
And Raymond Townsend was the captain of the UCLA basketball team at that time. John Wooden's last year. And what had happened is that Raymond had brought 4 or 5 friends
So
up
he
from
was
LA.
there. Okay.
They were the ones that were playing.
Kaya
And there was all these
lakas.
UCLA guys, juniors and seniors, and #1 team in the country that were playing in the gym.
Okay.
And I had no idea. And I was wondering, how could these guys be so good? They're supposed to be just little freshmen like me. And so later on, I found that out, and that's why I was so discouraged. But I had gone into that gym. It was just, they were incredible. And of course, Raymond and Curtis, maybe nobody knows, but their mother was Filipina.
Yeah.
And Raymond was really the first Phil-Am to play in the NBA.
Yeah.
And he was captain of the UCLA team, played for the Warriors for 4 or 5 years. And I ended up playing with his brother for a couple of years, Curtis, younger brother, who is now I'm not sure if he still is. He's the assistant coach to Kansas.
See, so not many people know this, right?
No,
Yeah,
he's
that
now
you played
assistant
with
coach
Curtis,
at Kansas University, which is one of the top programs in the United States. So, and then I see Raymond everyone. I go to his summer league, and
So you
Raymond
see-
and I
yeah,
will
okay.
bump into each other. He is so locked into the Philippines and the league and knows everything that's going on. But super guy, and I see him quite a bit. But every time we see each other, it's like, hey. And he knew that I played with his brother. So and I actually went to their house. They were from San Jose,
There.
California. I went to his house. The mother invited everybody down to the whole team, and we went there, and it was like Filipino food laid out. I was the only one that knew what I was eating. Nobody else knew what they were eating. But she was typical Filipino mother. I mean, eat, and super sweet.
So how was your first practice with Bud Presley? How was that like? So
Um,
where was there the legendary? He was the one with the charge drill that we always used to do in Alaska, right? The throw charge drill.
Yeah, you remember that one. Yeah, that's where I picked it up. Yeah,
Yep.
I guess I should explain that charge drill. Well, let me tell you this. Let me do it this
Yeah.
way. You mentioned Jeff Van Gundy.
Yeah.
And we saw him in the World Cup. We met him in the World Cup. That was a big thrill for me because he went to Menlo and played for Bud Presley 2 years after I left.
Okay.
So he knew Bud really well. So when we met that night, the first thing he said, you played for Bud. He says, oh, you got to have a Bud story. He goes, everybody has a Bud story.
Bud story, yeah.
And I go, yeah, I got my share of Bud stories. And then he told me a Bud story. He goes, let me tell you my Bud story. So his Bud story when we were at the World Cup at the restaurant, and he was telling me the story. He said, Bud, they went to a clinic, and it was for like 10, 11, 12-year-olds.
Yeah.
And so Bud decided to do this charge drill with these kids. And so, it's a drill for you guys who know basketball well. You stand underneath the basket, and then you put 3 lines, 1, 2, and 3 lines at half court. And then you give 3 balls to each line.
Yep.
And the guy takes the draw. One guy from the line takes the ball and dribbles, and you have to stand there like this, with your chest out. Can't put your hands in front, with your chest out, and take the charge.
Draw the charge.
Then you fall down, and then as you're scrambling up, the next line is coming at you.
Yeah.
And then you have to take another one, and then as you fall down, the third
next
line.
one, yep.
And that, it's crazy. I mean, you get so beat up. But I tell you what, when you get into those lines, you're ready to kill somebody. You're ready. When you're coming down, you're ready to bam, and hit
run
them
over somebody.
You hit me, I'm going to hit you right back. So everybody's like, chomping at the bit. So he was doing this drill with like 12, 13-year-olds. And, so apparently, according to Jeff, one guy came at one of the players, and they just kind of bumped him, and he fell to the ground. And then Bud goes nuts. He goes, you don't do that. You got to get back in line. He's throwing all these F-bombs.
Yeah, I was going to say, he did say it that way. He had a lot of F-bombs there for sure.
He's throwing at these kids. He's 11, 12. So he goes, get back in line. And he says, come, and he stands
He's the
up
one,
there.
he demonstrates
And he's like, according to, he was in his 60s when I was playing for him. So this was just a few years later. So he was like maybe 68, 69 at this time. And so he stands up on this line, and the guy comes and hits him, and he doesn't hit him hard. He doesn't knock Bud down. He goes, go back there and do it again. Hit me harder. So the other kid comes out. He was one of the biggest kids, according to Jeff. He comes, and he just nails Bud. And, 68, 69-year-old Bud flies down the ground. And he gets up, and he starts yelling, that's the way you do it. That's the way you do it. And the problem is he had a pacemaker on his chest. And the pacemaker pinched into his skin, and it cut him. So he was yelling and screaming. He had this white shirt on. It was all turning red and bleeding. And he was yelling at the kids, that's the way you do it. That's the way. And all these kids were like freaking out, and he was turning all red with blood. So anyway, that was it. And my first day of practice, he chased somebody and tried to kick him because he wasn't running sprints hard enough. And my first day of practice. And so he was really intimidating, and he had the hardest drills ever, but he was an absolute defensive genius. I mean, he knew fundamentals. I mean, he taught and pressed into us fundamentals. And I was not his star player, but I mean, I learned. I mean, he made sure I knew every little detail.
So would you say that's what shaped your being a real stickler and a defensive coach as well, your defensive philosophies and all
Absolutely. And, Jeff Van Gundy and I were talking, and I was telling Jeff, I watch your games. I watched the way Houston would play. I watched the way the Knicks would play.
Yeah.
And, all of your defensive fundamentals that you use
were still
the stuff that we did at Menlo. And he told me, absolutely. Yeah. And his defenses are very similar to my defenses because of Bud's influence. And I was not a defensive coach or a player at all, when I was growing up in high school. Then I got to him, and I realized, and I saw it. I saw the value of defense, and it made me look at the game completely different. From his point of view, made me look at the game completely different. And I still feel that's really unique, I always say that you on the internet, when you on Twitter and you look at one play, and then all of a sudden you get like 50, 50 plays, all these plays start coming up on your feed. Well, I see those, so I get all these plays on my feed, but when I look at them, and there were supposed to be these great offensive plays, great, and the coach's design and stuff like that, but I never see them as that. I always look and I saw, defense made a mistake there. That's why it worked. Defense made a mistake there. That's why it worked. So I see the game from the defensive side because of him instead of from the offensive side. When I see a great play, I always know that there's something wrong defensively that happened that made that play great.
Right off the bat, we got an insight into Coach Tim's defensive orientation. So that was your early start. Very few people know about that. How about our early start from your about us?
God, that was so long ago. I don't even remember. No, we were what? We were playing.
Yeah.
I was on. Yeah, I was on the white team, right?
Yeah.
And you were on the red or blue.
Blue. I think it was blue. The Reyes brothers.
Yeah, it was the Reyes brothers team. What a pain in the butt those guys were.
5 brothers.
5 brothers. None of them over what? 5'8", 5'9".
5'8". All guards.
And they all started the game, and they all played together.
And we pressed.
And we pressed and pressed. In a village game, they were, everybody else was playing, falling back into zone and not play. They were out there right in your face, pressing you right from the very beginning, and they would do it all game long. It was everybody hated playing against you guys, but. And you were you guys were literally untouchable. Yeah. Even though we had guys that were 6'3", 6'4", and eyelash, we could not compete with you guys.
Well, little did we know that we would work together.
Yeah. That's how I got to know you.
Yeah.
When I took over the Alaska job, one of the first things I had to do was hire someone to help me out.
You had already interviewed another guy, yeah.
Well, first of all, I had Arik Del Rosario. He was incumbent.
Yeah. Okay.
But he wasn't my guy that I had hired, and I didn't know him at all. And so and one of the things Fred told me is that you need to go out and get somebody that you that you trust to help you out. And I said, okay, great. So he goes, and he actually mentored me in this kind of procedure. I didn't know what the heck I was doing at that time. He says, think of some guys, interview them and then make a choice of what you want. So I said, okay. And then I always thought of you because of, we played and I knew you were coaching as well. So I think we were interviewed like 2 days later or the next day.
We were
you
scheduled.
came in, we talked, and you absolutely blew me away. And
So I'm lucky nobody else came after me. Maybe you would have changed your mind again after that. Yeah.
but so anyway, that's how we started out. And I remember I always kind of described us as the hammer and the sledgehammer. Because we were both super intense and we were both young and we were both passionate. And we had an older team that was not passionate and
correct.
not young.
Yep.
And we would get frustrated with them and everything. So
We grew together.
yeah,
We learned
and
so much.
I would say that when I say that, I say that facetiously, but like guys would come off the floor and I'd be yelling at them, so I'd hammer them in the head, and then they'd walk by me, and then Joe would have the sledgehammer, bam, bam, some more. So I was the hammer, you were the sledgehammer. Because the poor guys walking by us to the bench were in deep trouble when they screwed up. Because again, we were just both really passionate, and we didn't really balance each other that well at that time. We did later on as we got older, because we realized the importance of it. But I think in the beginning, we were just like super intense on guys. We wanted people to be as passionate as us. And it was difficult to do that when we were so young.
Yep.
I coached a high school team in international kids,
IS,
in IS, before
Before.
I joined Alaska. And I killed those kids. I did. I just, to this day, I feel guilty about the way I coached them. I mean, talk about passion. I made them do all those bud presses, the hardest college drills that I ever went through.
You made them.
I made these 13, 14-year-old guys do it, and I just killed them. Poor guys. And then I tried to do it with Abit and Yoy and Ray Lazo, Willie Pearson.
Yeah.
I mean, Ricky Relosa.
Relosa, Lazaro, and then B-Boy Ravanes, Frankie
B-Boy,
Lim,
and we had Bong Alvarez and Boy Cabao,
Rick Barata.
Yeah, that was our early team, and I was very abusive to those guys as well. I worked them really hard. If I knew now what I knew then, and understanding that I had a veteran like team, I would have been smarter.
Yeah.
But I was like, poor Abed, 39, 38 years old now, and I was making him do all these super hard drills. He had these bad knees.
Making them draw charge.
Charge drills. I mean, it was, remember the dive drill? Where you hold the ball down?
The loose ball drill.
Yeah, loose ball. That was another
drill.
Bud Presley drill that we did daily in practice. The loose ball drill, roll it down, dive on the floor, come back one-on-one, no fouls. We made these guys, these old guys, we made them do it. That was pretty cruel.
Yep. But well, like they say, those are the things that we did early on, and we learned a lot from it. Yeah. And that got us to the national team. That first iteration of what did we call the Centennial team?
Centennial team.
The Centennial team when we first worked together in the national team. And we worked in the Asian Games. We came home with the bronze.
Right.
And
which we were all so disappointed with. Remember, it was devastating. We were devastated to get the bronze. We didn't know that it would be 25 years later that we get another medal.
Yeah.
I mean, it didn't seem like any kind of accomplishment at that time.
Yeah. So now we come around full circle and you finish the job. You get your gold in the Asian Games again. So how cool was that?
It was cool. What's funny about that gold medal is that because we were in China.
Yeah.
It's kind of a surreal feeling because we have no fans in China, and we win the gold. We turn around and we look at each other and go, yeah. But there's nobody in the stands. There's no one to celebrate with, and it was very surreal winning that gold medal. Didn't feel like such a big deal until we actually touched down and we got into the airport, and we arrived at like 4:00 in the morning, 3:30 in the morning, and there were cameras and press that were there. Yep. It's like, what are you guys doing here at 3:30 in the morning? And we just wanted to get back and go to sleep, But they were there, with balloons and stuff, and it was quite remarkable. And then I think when it started to sink in that it was something of an accomplishment. But I don't know. I don't know. I think it helped because of I just think that people were really hungry for it. Mm-hmm. And there was a lot of things that happened during that thing. Just going back on it a little bit, I'm not sure, China wasn't the same China team that we played because they lost their NBA guy. Mm-hmm. And I think they took us for granted because we weren't the true team. Yeah. And they were looking forward to playing Jordan in the next game.
And then they were up already by 20
at half. They were up by 20 at half.
I think they thought they had won the game, yeah.
And then even Iran was good, but not great.
Yeah, not the
they were a good team, but they weren't great like they had been in the past with Haddadi and that group. Yeah. So those things, and then I just also think Jordan took us for granted.
Because they beat you so easily.
Yeah, they beat us so easily.
Yeah.
But we're PBA coaches.
Yeah.
The one thing that we know how to do is make adjustments and play a second time or a third time. We know how to do that. As a whole PBA coaches group, that's I think I've always felt over the years that's our strength, and I think that's why it's such a struggle for us in the international game when we're not used to.
It's just the one
game,
time,
and that's it. One game, that's it, and it makes it difficult from a coaching standpoint in terms of preparing, because we're very reactive and probably less proactive because we play series so often. And I think it's the same thing with the NBA. I think NBA coaches have the same problem.
Yep.
College coaches maybe not so much because they play the NCAA. They have the March Madness. It's the one and done.
It's the one and done.
But I think NBA coaches have a little bit of that problem. I know we have that little bit of a problem. But it's an advantage when we lose to a Jordan and
then you get another chance.
Yeah, get another chance at them. So that's what I felt that really helped us in terms of just kind of all fell. And you know how championships are. Yeah. They just kind of fall in place. You can look back and say, well, if this had happened, if that had happened, if this had happened, it wouldn't have happened for us. And then you can also look back when you placed third, or we got beat, and you didn't win that championship. You said, wow, if that had happened, or if that had happened, or if that had happened, we would have won that championship. So oftentimes it's just how it falls apart. But you just want to give yourself the best possible chance, I mean, it's not all chamba, but you do want to give give yourself the best possible chance.
But I think from somebody who has won so much in your career, just such as you, what are the things that happened throughout in your life, whether personally or professionally? Is there an adversity, something that happened throughout that you think because that taught you so much and made you a much better person and a much better coach? That you bring to this day.
Well, I think the number one thing early in my career was the loyalty that Frederick Tensu gave me, because I was able to go through a lot of adversity that a lot of coaches were not able to go through because of our personal relationship. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He and I had a personal relationship. We were friends off the court. We were friends before I became a coach and before I started working for him. So it was kind of a different dynamic that you normally have with a boss and employee. So normally the stuff that you have struggles, oftentimes, you can see it with the national team. You struggle, they chop your head off, and you're on. They're on to the next person, and you're not able to really learn from that. Not able to continue forward, and you get kind of cut off, and now you have to go to another team and start all over again. My ability to to have that stick with itness with Fred really gave me a lot of opportunity to fail and learn from failure. And that's where we learn most, I think, is from failure. And I had that. I mean, everybody looks at the championships that I've won, but it's been done over 35 years, so there's been a lot of losing in between, and more losing than winning, actually. And so I've been able to, withstand the fact that I've lost and still continue to push through and go forward and recover and learn something from that and be able to recover. And I think that's been, and that's why I encourage, the idea of the stick with itness. You've got to be able to learn through the failure, understand. I always thought that was our biggest issue with the national team, is that we didn't allow the teams, the players, the coaches to fail and learn from that and move forward, and then fail again and learn from that and move forward and jump to levels as you go. Because we're always either making a change or going, then it's basically start all over again. And
which is when we were talking about it, really one of the keys to the success of the Miami Heat, right? They've been together for what? Pat Riley,
30 years,
and
30 plus
Spoelstra,
years,
so
yeah.
30 plus.
Not only Spoelstra, but the team managers, the the GM, the assistant GM. He's the assistant GM, who's also the GM of their D-League team.
Okay.
And he does almost all the work for them. But he was he started in the video room with Eric Spoelstra. It was the two of them.
Okay.
And they're still
there
together now. And their boss at that time, under Pat Riley, who's now the GM, he was their boss in the video room.
And still
they're still going. And this was 35, 36 years ago when Eric Spoelstra first started out. And so that continuity and has really, they just know each other. They predict. I talk to them and they say they predict what other people are going to.
So that's basically the secret sauce behind the Heat culture.
Yeah.
When they talk about Heat culture,
the continuity.
The continuity.
Yeah. And it's very much evident. And all four guys are believing in it. And it's leads from Pat Riley and goes down through Eric and the GM and Eric and the assistant GM and into the whole staff. And that's what Eric Spoelstra always told me. He said the difference between successful NBA teams and NBA teams that are not successful. NBA teams that are successful have a singular voice that goes from top to bottom. You see that the organizations that have been through all you watch the teams like the Lakers. The Lakers were actually through Dr. Jerry Buss.
Yeah.
He was that voice that was constant all the way through those successful years. And then as soon as he passed away, they had, the brothers and the sons and the daughter, Jeannie, and all they had fights. And all of a sudden they were all scattered. And they're trying to get back into that voice through Jeannie now, but Jeannie Buss. But, that's one of the prime examples that they use. They also show the success of Popovich through the years. That single voice that he had goes through the year. I think it was Buford, the GM, and him. The two of them, led this culture, single voice culture. Of course, it's very evident in Pat Riley and the Heat. But he said, in the NBA there are so many voices because you got the owner, you got the owner's friends or Marcada, and we go through this ourselves. And you've got the GM, and then you've got the marketing group. And and all the way down, you've got the traders, you've got, and there's so many factions, and oftentimes, they all want to add in their stuff, and so you're getting it from all different directions and not in that single voice. And unless you have that single leader that's leading it all the way through, it gets very chaotic. And he says that's the norm in NBA teams. Everybody's battling to want to put their voice or the input in. And that's what really destroys NBA teams. It's the teams that have that single voice, that have that continuity and the ability to
That are the successful
the
ones.
successful ones over time.
Yeah, not necessarily the champions.
Not
right?
the champion,
Yeah,
because
not the
anybody can win a
champions, yeah.
championship. Everything
One
can
time,
break.
you can do one time.
Yeah, that's what I've always said. It's always easy, even in our league. Anybody can win a championship once.
Once, yeah.
Because it's just the stars align.
Yeah.
Players get a momentum.
Like you say, things fall in place.
Fall in
Yeah.
place, and you get into the finals, and the
Somebody
other team
gets injured, yeah,
right?
yeah.
You find your way up into the finals, and
But to be consistently there.
Be consistently there, yeah, that's the key. So Eric was Coach Spo was very, very definite when he talked about that.
So if the podcast is not only for sports coaches but also for business leaders, executives,
Exactly.
and all that. So if there were a lesson or two that you could pick up or that would apply to them, what do you think would it, through all the adversity, and like you said, you've had more losses than wins that you've picked up through all that, aside from the fact that, because the loyalty and the single voice is important, but that's not really from us personally, but from our management or our ownership, but from you personally.
Mm-hmm.
If there is something that you have learned that can apply to anyone who's listening now, is there one or two lessons that you think?
Well, I think the idea of continuity in an organization is really crucial.
Mm-hmm.
I think that and being able to fight through adversity and stick with it. I mean, obviously, we make changes to our groups all the time. But we do try to keep a core intact and build through that core. But I think that people talk about change all the time, and I think change is great, and especially if you're not doing well, and you really got to look at yourself, and you got to change. You got to be able to make a change. Yeah, I think also if you want to continue to be good, you got to be willing to change at times too, and change with the times.
Okay.
But I also think that has a tendency to get overrated. From my own personal experience, I don't think you change just for the sake of change. I think again that idea of stick with itness. I think you change hard. You don't change easy.
Okay.
Make the change, but make it hard, and make sure there's a absolute purpose behind that change. I also think that people, if you stick with them, and you show that you're ready to stay with them through thick and thin, and you see growth, then don't make the change, and I think that's what happened with me and at Alaska. We had really a lot of early success. Well, not early success, but we had early success. Then we struggled a little bit, but we battled through that. And then we had success again later. And there was also just a level of competition that we were always there, ready.
Yep.
And that was important to Fred Uitensu. Championships were really important, but the idea of being able to compete and be there all the time and be a threat all the time was really important to him. To him, the most important thing was semifinals.
Getting into the semis all the
If you
time.
got into the semis, you
It's
did
a
your
successful-
job. You did your job.
Yeah.
But if you didn't get into the semis, you were in deep trouble.
Yeah, well,
but you
yeah.
didn't have to win a championship all
Yeah.
the time. But the championships were important. But really, it was semis.
It's now that you mention it, the conference before we won our championship, he came to our practice and he said he put a number on the board. It was 16 or something. Anyone knows what this number was? So it was the number of conferences that Alaska had made the semis. They were always making the semis, and we were the first who did not make the semis. One of our tournaments, we did not make the semis. But then the very next conference, we won the championship. So we were also the first to win the championship. So what did we say? We had to be very bad first before we could become very good. So
And we were.
that was good.
We were bad.
We were very bad, and then we became
that's
very
because we
good.
had to change the. Well, every team is different. And when I look at the teams that I have coached,
Yeah.
Alaska was the one in which it was an expansion team. It was an old team. We had to make changes and get younger.
Yeah.
We had to get worse before we got better.
Better, yeah.
And it took time. And Trouble is we want instant.
So that's the other lesson. It's
Yes.
not instant. It takes time.
Everybody wants instant.
Yeah.
You know,
it's an IG generation,
yeah.
instant gratification. Yeah.
And we you know, it took time for us to build that team, and the more patience we did to build it, the stronger it became. And you know, I always walk into the first practice and say, we're not going to be good right now. We don't need to be good right now.
Yeah.
You know, we need to be good when the playoffs start. So we're going to build, and we're not going to shortcut. We're not going to try to rush. We're going to take our time, and we're going to get us to a point where we're ready to play in the playoffs.
Semis, yeah.
And so that's always been our philosophy. So that was our philosophy with Alaska. We needed to literally build that team. When I went to Pure Foods was built.
Yeah, it was a
They
strong
were
team.
they were
yeah.
a strong team, but they had been a terrible year.
They were coming off a bad year.
Really bad year, and the chemistry on that team was really
terrible.
terrible. And they, you know, you walk into the practice, and you had, you know, like James was and his group was there, PJ and his group was there.
You had Kirby.
You know, Kirby was in his group, and you know, they weren't talking to each other, and there was all kinds of issues, and we had to get over those chemistry issues. And again, it took time, but we had to get over the chemistry issues. And that it wasn't like we had to change all the players and get new players. We just needed to find the right mix. So we tried to work Kirby into it, but he didn't want it. Kirby Raimundo, he really wanted it, so he wanted to be traded. So we did trade him. But you know, we got somebody back. It fit a little better, and the chemistry started to improve. And then when it improved, you know, their talent
winning,
took over, and we became a dominant team. And then with Ginebra was this team that hadn't won in a long time, like 8 years.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you think about that, it's like 24 conferences.
Yep.
They hadn't won a championship, and they had a really talented Japeth and Greg Slaughter.
Yeah.
You know, Mark Agiwa, JJ, LA was there. Joe DeVance came there with me. So, you know, all the pieces were in place. But the thing that they had an issue was living up to expectations. You know, they were under so much pressure all the month, under the microscope. And, you know, they would get frustrated so easily. You know, the moment you fall behind, it would, like, everybody go, you know, they deflate and get discouraged. And those are the things we had to work through with Ginebra. So every team has different issues, and you have to discover those issues. You know, you have to really look and find out, you know, what do we have to do to make that. It's not always about getting the best personnel or changing people up or doing something different. You just have to recognize what the weakness of your team is.
So basically, what you're saying is, number one, don't change for change's sake, right? That's the first thing that you're saying. So change hard. That's change hard. And number two, if you decide to make the change, you got to figure out what needs to be changed.
Exactly.
And it's not always the personnel or the talent, which normally it's our default. It's a first thing.
Exactly.
Not only basketball team, but even companies do. Okay, we make a big mistake. Who do we fire? Sometimes it's a chemistry issue.
Yeah, sometimes it's addition by subtraction.
Yeah, sometimes it's addition by subtraction.
You have difficult personalities, and they don't want to change, or they don't want to be led.
Yep.
You know, and they're influencing the team in the wrong way, in the wrong you know, then you have to make a change, and that might mean you get a less talented person to come in and create the talent. And that's what we did with Pure Foods. Yep. We came in and got lesser players, but who would fit better with the incumbent stars that we had, and we were a tighter team.
And then finally, sometimes it's an issue of maybe just the expectation, taking away that pressure, and so and I'm sure those lessons translate very well not only to basketball or in sports, but
I think it's big in business,
business as well. Finally, we're coaching. It's Coaching Chronicles. So we're not only about the concept or the knowledge, the know-how, but we are really about the how-to. Mm-hmm. So I want people to come off and leave this with, okay, what are some real practical steps that I can do? What can you suggest for people some of your strategies for self-growth. What do you do on a regular basis? I mean, do you just? I'm sure you don't sit around on your fat ass all the time and then just. But how do you
My
grow? How
ass
do you
is
develop?
certainly getting fat, man.
How do you, how have you continued to be so competitive and successful through all these years? When everyone is coming up, as you see in our league now, everyone is getting stronger, man.
Yeah,
They're a firm and Northport, Blackwater. they're all-
Don't I know?
yeah, don't we both know that? Yeah. So what are your personal strategies? What can people pick up from?
Well, I think
As a
number one,
how-to.
you have to have an attitude.
Okay.
It starts with your attitude. You have to have an attitude of growth.
So in our business, we call that the growth mindset.
Yeah, so you have to have a growth
Yeah.
mindset, and if you don't have that attitude, then you're not
Then-
going to grow.
yeah.
It doesn't happen naturally.
Yeah.
It has to be worked at, and I think that's number one. And so if you have that recognition, for me, I felt that I've never worked a day in my life because I have great passion for the game and for what I do.
You love what you're
so
doing.
I love what I
yeah.
do. So I don't feel like anything that I do is work.
Yeah.
And I know that isn't this always the case for everyone. But it makes it easier for me to want, because it's something I love to do. So I love to explore the game. I love to explore the game in many different ways. As you know, John Maxwell is I always tell everybody he's my mentor. And I always tell everybody he doesn't know he's my mentor, but he's my mentor. I've never met him. I know you have met him, but I have never met him. I spend a lot of time with him and other leaders that
So
I
his
research.
books, his
even his
blog,
podcast,
his podcast, online. So
we'll put it
that's
on.
one, yeah.
My wife and I will put it on the car.
Yeah.
And listen
to it in
as
traffic.
in traffic, yeah.
Correct.
And different leadership stuff, and it's good for her as well.
Yeah.
She learns a lot, and she actually gets more excited about him than I do. But we do that occasionally, and I don't think there's more than maybe 2 or 3 books that I haven't read of John Maxwell, and he's
Great.
probably written 50.
Yeah.
And I think I've just about read every one of them, except maybe the little small pamphlets that he does. And but not just him, and exploring anything. I have when I read a quote, I put a quote in. I have a list of quote, and I have maybe, and it's not a quote that's normal quote.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm reading an article, and I'll read a coach like Popovich will say something, or Spo will say something about a game, about his team that happened in the game, and I put it on my iPad, and I've probably got up to at least over 1,000 quotes that I can go back on and look at. If I see something on Twitter, I will copy paste it and put it in my notes, and then I'll do it. It might be a play, it might be talk that someone has said. And these are just ways that I keep in touch and keep growing with.
For those who don't know, if you're with Tim, we're traveling and all that, he always has his Kindle on hand, his iPad, because there always is a book there. So talk to us about your reading habit and these books you read.
I love to read, and
it's not basketball books. It's not sports books, right?
No. In fact, it's rare that I read a basketball book. Unless it's a Phil Jackson, Chicago Bulls triangle thing. I might read a Coach K book once in a while.
But you read these historical novels that.
Yeah, I'm basically a novel. I read novels, and you look at my Kindle. I get hundreds of books at my Kindle that I've read over the time, and I just open up whenever I'm sitting around. Other people will get on their phone and look at their phone. I open up my iPad.
What are you reading now for our viewers? What am I reading now?
I just finished, for the second time, just a couple of weeks ago, for the second time, I finished the whole saga of Wheel of Time.
And how long is that?
That's
you told me about that.
16 books. And each book is about a little over 1,000 pages. And they just started the series in Prime. It's the Wheel of Time series in Prime. And
so it's on Amazon Prime now?
It's on Amazon Prime. There's a TV series going on. It's a fantasy series.
Okay, yeah.
But it's probably the fantasy series way before Game of Thrones. You know? And I read Game of Thrones long
before it went on HBO.
I mean, I read it books when they literally came off the shelf. I was reading Game of Thrones already. That was 15 years before the series came out. So, but this is the second time I read it. I read it 20, 30 years ago, and then I knew the series was coming out, so I said, okay, I'll start reading it again. And I just finished the 16th book about 2 days ago. I was just going to say that the writer, he didn't even write the last two. He died. He had to finish it now with another guy named Brandon Sanderson. And so that's why there's 16 of them.
Wow.
So
I'm an avid
reader.
book reader, not as voracious as Coach Tim. So number one, you have to have that attitude, that growth mindset. Number two, to be find your mentor and try to consume as much as you can from that and other mentors. And number three, I think a lot of and this is my personal advocacy, is physically also your fitness routine. I think as much as it's important that we nurture our minds, the one thing that we should never forget is to always how important physical health is. And I wanted to close on that because that's our personal advocacy. So talk to us about your fitness routine, your daily basis. Yeah,
I've been watching you over the years, and I mean, I am so jealous of what you've been able to do with your body and how you've been gotten in shape. And you've actually, you know, when we started working together in the World Cup, you started inspiring me a little bit. And so I've lost a little bit of weight, and but I do it. I'm not a guy that runs to the gym or does. I do it through.
We're both avid walkers.
Yeah. I walk with my wife every night. Yeah. I mean, without fail, we walk 45 minutes to an hour every night after dinner. And when we're on the road, you know, I'll walk hour and a half, 2 hours, you know, and if we have the time, and we usually do. Yeah. But you're a gym guy. You walk and then go to the gym. I walk and I'll go to the tennis court. Yeah. I'll go to the tennis court or play golf. So I've gotten to a stage where I try to play tennis literally every day. If not, I'll play golf. And, but it's only usually 9 holes of golf. I don't play 18.
So why is that important for you? Why is having that walk?
Number one, you feel better about yourself. And I think if you feel better about yourself, you're more confident with yourself. Number one. I think that's really primarily. I just feel better.
Yep.
I feel better about myself. I'm more confident about myself. And if I'm more confident about myself, I honestly coach better.
You feel you make better decisions.
I make better decisions. I you know, and you know, I think it's incumbent, especially at my age now. I've always felt like, you know, your 40s, when you exercise and work out in your 40s, you're preparing yourself for your 50s. Mm-hmm. And then when you get to your 50s, you work out, you prepare yourself for your 60s. And now I'm in my 60s, mid 60s, almost late 60s. I'm preparing myself. I really feel for the 70s because my body will continue to last me into my 70s. So I can go out and play. I'm 66 now, and I can go out and play an hour and a half of really tennis. Hard singles tennis and be moving along the
court. This is real tennis. This tennis is not the tennis where you're just hitting balikan.
No, we play singles and play hard, and I'll play against guys who are much better than me. But we move hard on the court, and I can do that for an hour and a half and not feel beat up the next day.
No, there was a time we played golf and you played tennis first in the morning.
Yeah, I used to do that a lot.
We did golf,
but it ruined my golf. It started ruining my golf game. I used to do that. I used to play tennis in the morning, but it was only doubles at that time. I played tennis in the morning for like an hour and a half, 2, in the early morning. Like we started 6 a.m.
6, yeah.
And then in the afternoon, I'd go play golf. My body would be so stiff from the tennis that I couldn't swing, and I get so frustrated. So now I try to do one of either. But I can play golf and then go play tennis.
You can.
I can.
Yeah.
But I can't play tennis and then go play golf.
Oh, yeah, see? So, there you have it. That's from Coach Tim Cohn himself, who's what, 65, 66. Okay. How important our physical routine, our exercise routine is the fitness because it makes us feel better about ourselves and in the process makes us make better decisions. So I think that's an excellent way to close off our discussion, our podcast. I mean,
Can I just say something before
Please,
we get
yeah.
off? I just want to mention it because I've not been able to. I'm now taking over the national team coach, and I just want to say, and I want to say this to you, and I want to say this to anybody who's listening, that I think the thing that you have done most for us as a country is that you have proven to us that we can play with anybody. And I really, truly believe that. And when we look at the World Cup now, and this last World Cup, and we look at the World Cup in 2014, I don't think that we really felt that we could play with teams of that caliber. And the thing that I feel is that until you took over in 2014, until we did this last World Cup, genuinely, I was of the belief that we couldn't play with these guys.
Yeah.
But I saw through the way your approach and how you did it that we can play with these guys. We couldn't quite get over the hump.
Yep.
We had so many opportunities
Yeah.
to get over the hump. And, we just talk about things falling in place.
Yes.
It never quite fell in place, but we always gave ourselves a chance
yeah.
to win. It didn't matter who we played. I mean, Italy, these tough teams like Italy, we were right there.
Dominican, we were right there.
Dominican
We had the
Republic, we
lead
were
in the
right
last
there.
quarter, yeah.
We were right there against these teams. And even Argentina back in 2014 and the other teams
and
that you played
Croatia,
at.
yeah.
Croatia, you had them beat,
Yeah.
basically. So that, to me, that has given, I think, all of us in the program now the belief that we can compete at that level. And before you did that, I don't think anybody felt that we could compete at that level. I mean, we'd go out and we'd play a good team. We'd get beat by 30, by 40. We couldn't compete with them, and that belief is so important. If you don't have the belief that you can do it, there's no
course.
chance. And you always gave us the belief. Even, I was there. I was in the World Cup. I saw it every day. I saw your approach. I saw how you did it. You gave belief to those guys that they could do it. And you've given me belief that you could do it. And to me, if, and that's a huge if we have any success with what we're doing now, it'll be because of the legacy you gave us and that belief that we did it, that we could do it previously. So I just think that I don't think that's been talked about or mentioned, and I think that's just a huge part of the way our approach right now is. Trying to go from your program into this newer program is that we now have that sense that maybe we can, and that was from you and how you gathered the players and got the players and played those teams tough and organized it. It all came from you.
Well, thanks for saying that, and I can see by the way you're doing things now when you talk about the continuity. Yeah, so you're basically it's just you're continuing. I mean, you're doing things your way, which you should do, but there's a lot of continuity.
Exactly.
With the players and all there. You're not changing.
No, we're not changing anything. It's just it's my system in terms
your
of
system. Yeah.
I mean, you're
It should
we
be.
you do dribble drive, I do triangle.
Yeah.
And that's the only thing that's changed. Otherwise, I'm just continuing your program
Everything
right
else.
in, and we're using your same contacts. we're doing everything,
Yeah.
And again, we're trying to play teams that get us prepared and I just I think that's going to be built from your legacy. You're the only ones you're the only one who was able to do that for us.
Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. And I really hope that's the reason why I wore the shirt, because what do we say? Once Gilas, always Gilas. Yeah, we're always Team Philippines. And
I came from practice. Otherwise, I came from a never practice. Otherwise, I'd be wearing that shirt too.
No problem, yeah. But you're always going to have my support in whatever shape, form that you need, and we'll always wish you the best. But for now, I think this was a very, very wonderful, amazing conversation. the first episode of our podcast, Coaching Chronicles.
I think we could do the first 10 together.
Yeah. Now the next thing we're thinking of is there's a theater downstairs. We'll go and actually dissect the game, and that would be fun. Yeah, but yeah, or in the golf course and do it on the course.
That's kind of embarrassing for me. He looks good doing it. I don't look so good at it.
Galing dito mag-golf, kunyari lang ito. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very, very much, Coach Tim Cone. I hope you got an insight into, number one, what makes him tick, why he's been so successful, and more importantly for me is that you get ideas that you can use as well. The reason why we've put this podcast on air is so that it could be of use to whoever has the time to listen and to watch, because the same thing with my leadership workshops and the talks I give. I want it to be of value. I want it to be practical. And like you said, it's about, like we said, we're coaches. It's about the how-to, more than just the know-how, more than just the the theoretical knowledge. We want you to have practical ideas and tips, so that right away, right after watching this, oh, this is what Coach Tim Cone did. So let me get a book. Let me look up John Maxwell, or let me take a look at this podcast. So hopefully you continue to join us in the future as we continue our coaching chronicles, talking to the men and women in the arena. Coach Chot Reyes, thank you for joining us.